All right, today we are jumping into one of the biggest questions out there, maybe the biggest question. What is truth? It's a quest that's driven thinkers, scientists, and philosophers for, well, forever. And in this explainer, we're going to look at two very different ways we've tried to find it. So let's just dive right in. What even is truth? I mean, it sounds simple, right? But is it some cold, hard fact? Is it a personal feeling? Or is it a universal law that never changes? The deeper you dig, you realize, wow, this gets complicated fast. Okay, that's a pretty wild statement, right? The idea here is that once you step outside of pure, undeniable logic, like 2 plus 2 equals 4, almost everything else we call true isn't totally solid. It can be questioned, it can evolve. And that really forces us to ask, what do we actually know for sure? So first things first, let's talk about the perception of truth. Because before we can even begin to find it, we've got to understand that truth isn't just one thing. The way you see the world literally shapes the reality, the truth that you experience. You can kind of break truth down into two big buckets. On one hand, you have absolute objective truth. This is the stuff that's true for everyone, everywhere. Think gravity. It doesn't matter if you believe in it, it's still going to keep you on the ground. But then there's subjective truth. This is your truth, and it's shaped by everything, your background, your senses, your culture. It's exactly why two people can see the exact same car crash and walk away with two totally different stories of what went down. Okay, so if we want to find that objective, capital T truth, how do we do it? Well, the first path we're going to walk down is science. It's a system designed for one reason, to uncover the hard, verifiable facts of our universe. The whole point of the scientific method is to be this rigorous process that strips away all our personal biases. It all starts with a belief, an idea, which in science we give a fancy name, a hypothesis. But then comes the really important part. You gotta test it. You experiment. You try your best to prove it wrong. And only if it survives all of that can you even begin to call it an objective truth. But, and this is a huge but, even scientific truth can change. Just look at Einstein's cosmological constant. He came up with it, then later called it his greatest blunder. But guess what? Decades later, new discoveries suggested he might have been right all along. It's the perfect example of how science isn't a book of answers. It's a process of constantly getting a little bit closer to the truth. All right, so that's science. Now let's switch gears and explore a completely different path in this quest for truth. This is the path of faith, and it tackles the question from another angle entirely. It's not just about what is, but why it is. It's a search for meaning. Faith isn't about giving up on questions. It's actually a different kind of starting line. It gives us a foundation to stand on when we hit the absolute limits of what we can prove with data, giving us a framework to make sense of life's biggest mysteries. So where does this kind of truth come from? Well, it's usually built on a few key things. It often comes from scripture, which then gets interpreted by brilliant minds over centuries. It's rooted in this deeper, visionary kind of understanding. And maybe most importantly, it gives people comfort, hope, and a moral compass to help get through this messy thing we call life. And don't think for a second this path doesn't have its own deep, intellectual side. The philosopher Abraham Joshua Heschel put it perfectly. He said studying religion has two jobs. First, to get what it even means to believe, and second, to actually dig in and examine the content of those beliefs. It's a serious analytical journey. So we've got science hunting for facts and faith searching for meaning. You think they're polar opposites, right? On a collision course? What if I told you they have way more in common than you'd think? This is where it all starts to click together. Just think about it for a second. Science begins with a hypothesis, right? An idea that you have to go out and test. Faith begins with a belief, an idea that gets tested through life, through reason, through experience. See the parallel? At their very core, both start with an idea that hasn't been proven yet. And this leads to a pretty mind-blowing conclusion. They are basically the same thing. A hypothesis in a lab coat and a belief in your heart, they're both just starting points on a journey to find out what's real. They're just different words for that same deeply human drive to put an idea out there and see if it holds up. And hey, this isn't some new age idea. We're talking centuries ago. The philosopher Maimonides basically said that to even begin to understand the divine, you first have to get a handle on the physical world through logic and math and science. For him, science wasn't the enemy of faith, it was the front door. Okay, so after all this, After exploring these huge, sweeping quests for truth, the journey has to come back to one person: you. The real challenge isn't about picking a team, science, or faith. It's about building your own understanding. So here it is, your call to action. Be an active player in your own search for truth. Question things. Challenge what you read and what you hear. Keep your mind wide open to new information. Pull wisdom from everywhere, from science, from faith, from art. And in the end, you have to decide for yourself what to believe. Perhaps nobody summed this up better than Albert Einstein himself. He said, "Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind." It just perfectly captures this idea that maybe these two great quests actually need each other to paint the full picture of our world. We've looked at the maps, we've seen the different paths, and we've seen where they surprisingly connect. But now, the quest for truth is in your hands. So the final question, that one's for you. What will you believe?